So week 5, management, training for criteria speed, and then Q&A. So perfect solutions in a perfect world is that we all have our horses on a track system. We all have like the HIT active system where maybe the horses get like a collar with a chip in it or wearing a halter, and then the food just opens up for that particular horse, for that particular amount of food, or this is another track paradise system. Let's see. So those are the perfect solutions in a perfect world, that we have that diet perfectly in all seasons, because and adjusting for their age and for how much they move, but that's just not the real world. So we always have to like balance it, like, okay, a little bit more of that, a little bit less of that, a little bit more of that. Like in winter, I like winter for overweight horses, if you are in an area where the winters are cold, because burning off calories to stay warm is a great help. I like it more than being in spring, where all the sugary, fresh, lush grass is available, even if you don't have a pasture, but even on a track system, they will find it. So, yeah. Do you have to put special footing in track system because of mud? I would suggest doing mud control, and there's so many solutions out there. One of the solutions that I like very much, like, is it's a century-old solution. It's putting sheep fleece, so just wool of sheep, and then putting that in the mud, because due to the friction and the water, it becomes felt, and then it becomes like a kind of a blanket. It's all natural. I think you can get like from a sheep shearer or a sheep farm. There's always parts of the fleece that they don't use because it's the wrong fiber. It's not it's low quality, or it's super dirty or whatever, and those are perfect fibers to get, like, find them and then use them. You can also have like those tiles, those mud control tiles, which are way more expensive. You can think of like gravel. So yeah, it totally depends, but I would do mud control just because if you are in an area where there's a lot of mud, you also get like mud fever or stuff like that. And a little bit of mud is not a problem, but like as you can see on the left here, like, yeah, there's dirt, but there's also stones, and as long as they have like a dry part where they can kind of dry up, yeah, and the horse is healthy, yeah, that can be thing. I like the right picture, because they have like those what you call trunks, or pieces of wood. So the horse can either choose to go around them or go over them. So I like it that there's some choice there. But yeah, when I had Kira, this was kind of the situation where I was in, body score 9. She immediately, because I put her on a restricted diet, immediately she tore down my expensive hay nets. She basically starting to eat that shelter, because I had to move her from the group to solitary confinement, especially in the beginning, because I had to do something about her calorie intake and I wanted to manage that. So I had to find solutions that worked for me. I don't think I have the solutions on the next slide, but what I did, for instance, so chewing wood can be boredom. What I always like to do is, if there's like a problem or problem behavior, I like to call it undesired behavior, is that I go figure out what the root cause is, and then adjust the cause. Like chewing a hole in the hay net could be boredom, but it could also be frustration that she just couldn't get the food fast enough because she was so hungry in between meals. So she was very hungry when her next meal was coming. And then chewing wood could be lack of fiber because she simply got less food. So what I did, and you have to experiment because it's from individual to individual. So I would love to see how you keep your horses and discuss like what are some options that we can help improve your horse's management, so we can help him get in a better shape and help him recover if they had laminitis. So for instance, the wood chewing was like, and she was also pacing, and she had a lot of stress, and stress and laminitis, stress and inflammation is so bad. So I was super worried. So then I was starting to figure out how can I increase her overall welfare, even though I keep her solitary. She could see her friends, but I think that was part of the frustration because her friends were over there and there were a few paddocks in between them, even though they had horses, but those horses lived there also in solitary confinement, so she never interacted with them, but like her friends were over there. And then at night she was in the stable just with her normal neighbors. So I do think that was less stressful because that was something very familiar to her, even though I do believe that it can be still stressful to be locked up. So what I did was like, okay, how can I improve her welfare, lower her stress levels? So I did all kinds of things. I did try to discourage, on the one hand, to eat the wood because that was very expensive, because I got billed for this from the barn owner. So I started to offer straw in a hay net. And I figured because it will give her something to do, because she liked to pull out the straws of the straw, and then some are I know when they have like those little things at the top where the wheat or the barley was growing, they like that part, so that gives them something to do. A straw offers is so high in fiber, low in nutrition. So that's what I did for her. Some people mix straw and hay in a net, so they really have to are busy to picking out the good stuff first. And what I noticed for Kira is that she decreased her pacing, and wood chewing stopped. Well, it also stopped partly because I discouraged chewing wood, and I tried all kinds of things to do that. But by offering her straw, and I was offering her a parsnip on a rope, but she didn't eat that. But it's very hard because the parsnip is like a very hard kind of root vegetable. So if they try to chew it or grab it and it's on a rope from the ceiling, then it goes everywhere. So I was hoping to give her some enrichment with her and something to do. She was not interested, so then I had to clicker train her to tell her to eat the parsnip, so that it was edible. So anyway, yeah, so these are some of the things that I do, and so if you have questions about that, if you have like a struggle about that, let me know, because I think discussing solutions in a group can be very helpful and give people ideas. Like, yeah, what I said already, like the other day I learned that some people mix hay and straw and then either put it in a net or put it loose. So depending on the horse, some horses will gobble the straw up no matter what, so then it's a different story again. So yeah, there's all kinds of ways that we can enrich even like a smaller area, and even if they are in solitary confinement for the moment. Um, so yeah, there's all kinds of ideas that you can help and think like, okay, this is the problem. They're pacing. How can I help my horse stop pacing? Because yeah, pacing when they have laminitis is also not good, and because it's such a stress behavior. That was another indication, like how can I lower her stress and raise her welfare, so yeah, healing can start to happen. Any questions about that? Comments? Okay, let's talk about speed. Help your horse to offer more behavior. Yeah, Rachel.
Hey, actually, I am really interested in learning more about that track system. But I have wondered, like, if you have a long track system and you have three horses, for instance, like if you put hay in different areas, like one of the horses is going to get one bag and they're going to kick the other horse off, and one horse isn't going to want to go like half mile down by themselves and go get the hay. So do you put like three bags of hay in one spot if you have three horses?
I would always offer more hay bags than horses if they will fight over the resources, and then it's a matter of yeah, listen to your horse. Like if you have a track, so it's really a track, I would make it wide so no horse will feel ever trapped. No horse can block the other horse, or the chances of blocking the horse from going somewhere, yeah, try to decrease that possibility. Um, and it's also like, yeah, if there's, yeah, make it available to them. If you know, like, okay, that one horse doesn't want to go by himself or by herself all the way over there, then the question is, where can I offer the hay that that horse will go without being chased off of it all the time? Um, yeah, so um, do you have a track?
No, it was something I was considering putting in. I mean, like I have 20 acres, so I've just been trying to figure out like it's really I've had to even think in my mind like where would I put it? How would I lay it out so that they can get to like their shelters, so that I can get them into their feeding pens. I don't know, like I need somebody to figure out how to lay this thing out.
Yeah, an architect.
A
Like
very good book.
there
Um,
is a book.
yeah, Jamie Jackson's book on
That's the
paddock.
one.
It's, it's absolutely, he was the right guy that invented the track system, really. And his book will tell you everything. It's really good. Get that on Amazon. And there's all
Yeah,
sorts of lessons, I think. Yeah.
that was what I would start with. Start there, and then because like there's so many options, and it also depends on the area, the environment where you're in. Because I can remember, I'm not sure. Maybe you. I never read the book. I only were in the Facebook groups. Oh, thank you for that link. But I can remember that he was on a hill, on a mountain. Was it
Yeah.
hilly?
Yeah, it was hilly and rocky. It was huge amount of space he had. I think it's Colorado or someone like
Yeah.
that, somewhere very um but you know, as an example, it's I think very interesting to see because you can make a track in a small area, can't you? Really, as long as you give them motivation to keep moving around.
Yeah,
I
and
can't.
also, and there's also things like separating the food from the water. Like in nature, they eat like grass or grasses or browse, but then once a day or twice a day, but I believe sometimes only once a day, they go to watering hole or to a water source to drink. So, and like we try to help them so much by putting the hay next to the water, so they don't even have to do one step. So it's all about thinking about their natural behavior. Like, okay, after eating hay, they will drink. So in order to entice them to move, put the water like far away from where they get the hay, for instance. And then you can even say like, okay, and then I put like a little jump in between just to activate their movement even more. So there's like so many environments, so many horses, so many people, so many budgets that will all, help you do that. Like uh, I am so lucky that I have like this paddock. This was already built, and the shelter was in the middle, which I really, really, really love because that helps entice the horses to run around it. In the boarding facility where I had Kira, they had like a really huge square paddock. It was like 100 meters by 100 meters for 6 horses. And then they also had like a shelter right in the middle. And what happened was that horses could walk around it. And also we put hay nets inside the shelter and outside on the other side of the shelter. So horses could eat not too far from each other, but they could eat like without being disturbed. And there were always more hay nets than horses, and it's like kind of natural that some horses like, okay, they start munching on hay net number 1 and then they chase off or just say like flick of a ear like, hey, now I want to eat from that plate, from that net, you go away. So that's also a part of their movement. So that's, you have to figure out what works for, like, is there like is there something consistent about the resource guarding, Rachel, that you see going on?
Yeah, interesting. I have 3 horses. Technically one of them is my daughter's, and she's the only one that's not clicker trained. And interestingly enough, she's the most aggressive with food. So she definitely resource guards pretty badly.
Do you know anything about that horse's history?
I didn't get her until she was 11 years old. She's 15 now. Even with the clicker training, I actually, not a ton, but here and there I have worked on clicker training with her, and she resource guards really bad with clicker training too. I've had a little bit of a struggle doing any of the clicker training with her because she's really serious about the food. So, and my daughter's, not really a clicker trainer, so I've kind of tried to stay away from that to a degree, but I don't think she was ever abused. I think she just lived in traditional training homes.
Yeah. And what is a part of the traditional way of keeping horses is just to feed them once or twice, or if they're lucky, 3 times a day. So that means like food is restricted and becomes a thing. Like when they're like, just having ad lib food, they don't care so much about that. Like I really see that, like when I got Fionn and Odin, the warning was you cannot let them eat together because they will kill each other. They will fight. Having said that, I'm like, no problem. I'm like, okay, thanks for the warning, mental note. But yeah, I made one big enclosure for them, stable, because we do have cougars here that like to eat horses occasionally, or at least attack them. And since my little ponies are snack size, I have to lock them up. But in the beginning, they were more food aggressive, and then I started to feed them ad lib, and that went very well, and their food aggression went down. Now I'm having them on more restrictive diet. Yeah, that comes up. So it's more like, okay, less calories, more food aggression, which makes sense. I'm not a happy person when I don't have enough calories. So yeah, but it's so interesting because I have seen horses change their behavior in a herd once they started to once they were clicker trained. I have seen horses become more confident and less stressful in the herd, but also making choices more in the horse. Like instead of like Kira was always, she let herself like chased off food, but she started to stood her ground. So I don't know what that is about, and but I did notice that, like, yeah. So yeah, I don't really have like a cookie cutter answer for that, but
Mm-hmm.
because I just don't know your horse, I haven't seen any video, so it's hard to get ideas. But sometimes even if you have like an overweight horse, it's they get movement as long as they don't injure themselves. But for in my case with Odin and Fionn, Odin is the one that I suspect to be metabolic, so he's the hungry one and he chases Fionn off, of course. So he can eat more and move less. So yeah, it's all individual, and see what it helps. And if you have like a video of your setup, that will give me more ideas.
Okay. Well, I mean, like I said, I'm considering over time doing the track system. I just have to figure out all of the setup and all the way to do it to make all the horses happy and get to all of my nooks and crannies. So I'll look up that information that Sarah put on there.
Yeah, and one of the there are some Facebook groups that are really good with lots of pictures that people put up. One of the things that I really like, and that's what I love about my own property, is like shelter in the middle, so they can run around it, but they also can go out of each other's sight if they needed to. So could be a pro with feeding time also. Because they are herbivores. I think if they don't see each other when they are eating, it just doesn't come into their mind to look what the other horse is getting. While if they are in each other's vision, it's like, oh, you are eating over there. What do you get? Like, and I will chase you off. Because that's not the way herbivores think. If they don't see that the other horse is eating over there, if they cannot see it, the food aggression goes down. That's what I have noticed. And also if like the other horses that are chased off the food know where the other food is, then they will just simply go there. So yeah, and then with a track system, it's also built over time. You don't have to do everything at once. And you can start small and experiment and think like, okay, for my horses this works or that works, and then gradually add more enrichment and more things to it and experiment. That's all it is. Okay, so help your horse to offer more behavior. So at this point, I think everybody is there, click at the cone and feed at the cone, or maybe feeding for position a little bit more forward, making sure that we don't lure the horse, but we like the horse is walking, or we click, we go at the cone, present the food, so the horse is already has to keep walking after the click in order to get the food. We don't do this, we don't lure them, we present it at a certain in a way that they have to go move toward the food. So this is also a little bit individually how you exactly do that. Yesterday I was helping a client, and she stayed in the track inside the cones, And that's when I realized, okay, in order to feed for position, we are allowed to step outside the track in order to feed for position and then step inward, because the horse will still learn that when they move, they have to move around the cone. So don't be afraid to step outwards to feed them for position. So this is basically how I build it up and how I create pretty quickly a trot, and you can use this for canter too. So you click and feed at the cone, and then you start clicking a little bit sooner and still feed at the cone, so that they will know the cone is where the good things happen. Next slide. Oh, this was going too fast. Oh, I'm missing a visual. Okay, so here we click at the cone and we feed a little bit in front of the cone, but then I want you to start clicking sooner. So when your horse is approaching the cone, and then feed at the cone, and then you can move the click sooner and still feed at the cone. So in the beginning, yeah, please let me know if you have questions, because I have like
Just wanted to ask, if the horse or donkey doesn't stop, if you click just before the cone, but the horse keeps going round and doesn't stop for the treat, what do you do? Do you stop the horse, or do you let it go on to the next cone or whatever?
well, in order to teach them that the click does mean something, because Sean did that yesterday. He was so enthusiastic. He kept running. I clicked and I was too late with the food, and he kept running. I will make a video today of that, because he sometimes does that. He's just like, he's the one trick pony. Once he learned this is it. So for him, it's really hard to increase criteria and change his behavior. So what I want for Fionn is that he learns that there's something at the cone. So when he wants to stop, he needs to stop at the cone, because otherwise I just want to give him clarity. So what I then do is I time my click, and I time where I am in the rectangle. For instance, I have noticed that when I'm like more or less in the middle, and let's say here where the horse is cone number 1, then the right top is cone number 2, right bottom is 3, and this is 4. So when I click at cone number 1, I can be at cone number 2 before he arrives. And when I have like the buffet ready with my hand, he will stop. Sometimes I'm too late. And when I'm approaching cone number 2, he's running to cone number 3, and then he's running to cone number 4, and I'm in the middle with like treat ready to give, and I'm like, ah! So I kind of figure out some cones are better to click for. So if you click here for in the top right corner, this is, let's say, cone number 2, and you click before cone number 2, you have enough time to go to cone number 3 and be ready with your treat.
Right, because if you're trying to get duration, you don't particularly want them to stop when they're going, do you? Or
yeah, so you kind of like now at the part of training where you build that duration, you build speed, but you like if Kika doesn't listen to the click, you do want her to listen to the click and basically stop, or at least find a treat, because otherwise there will be a point that she thinks either she won't pay attention to the click because it doesn't mean anything, because she doesn't get a treat because she's running. You cannot give her a treat, and then she you might end up that she's offering more duration or more speed because she's in the extinction phase. She's like, I'm not getting anything. I'm doing more and more and more. I'm not still get nothing. So I'm doing more in order to get that treat.
Right. Oh yeah.
Get to the extinction burst. And that's really not how we want to train our horses. Yes, there's also always a little bit of that when we hold the click in order to get more movement or more behavior, but we don't want to get like an internal really high level of frustration. It's basically the 2-year-old toddler in the supermarket on the back, kicking the air. And then finally the mom like, okay, here's your lollipop and now shut up and never ever do that again. The toddler just learned in the extinction burst, it will happen. So instead of like crying and kicking and screaming for 5 minutes, now you just like increased the duration of that tantrum to, okay, last time I got it was after 5 minutes. So now the toddler is willing to go 10 minutes. And it works every time because the mom's embarrassed. There's pressure on the mom. The mom's like, ugh! Instead of like, yeah, in order to break that pattern, you have to do something else. But we don't want to get our animals into that state because we want it to stay win-win. So for Kika, I will go like kind of a few sessions about like click and treat at the cone so that she will know to stop at the cone.
I think you're right. I think she's not actually listening to the click.
No, she's not. She's in her own world. So that's where I think like there's a little bit frustration, and maybe that frustration build up like in anticipation going to the cones. And because there she's not so close to you, but like the kind of aggression behaviors are already starting with anticipation on that, because maybe she is in that extinction burst and anticipating already on that. So therefore, like clarity with the target stick will help keep her emotions like frustration low.
Right, good.
So I'll stop share. I will quickly see where my, oh yeah, okay. I just have to exchange the order of the 3 slides. So this is where we start. We click and feed at the cone. If your horse ignores the click or the cone, then we go back to feeding and clicking at every cone. We don't have to do this at every cone if we're building duration. So here's the point where we have built our foundation, and then we do a little bit of that, we do a little bit of that, we do a little bit of that. If that doesn't work, we lower our criteria temporarily. But I just want you to teach this as a principle, not as a rule. So it's not like Sandra said, click and treat with every cone. But this is the principle. By clicking and feeding at every cone, we teach a horse at the cone, good things happen. It's all about the cones. The cones become a visual cue as well. So we can click and feed, then we can click and feed for position, like forward movement, forward, like without luring, but just click and then feed. So the horse needs to go to the food. We are allowed to step outside the track when we are feeding, in order to feed for positions and to prevent our horses to bend their neck inwards, because that will only teach them to come inwards and skip cones. So in the beginning, click and treat happens close together at the cone. So the next step is to put the click a little bit before the cone, because they already know, oh, cone, good things happening, and I have to walk around the cone. So if you click a little bit sooner, just before the horse reaches the cone, and then click and feed at the cone, we create like a little gap between the click, which reinforces the movement that we are marking, and then the click becomes also the cue for the behavior that happens after the click. So by having a little time gap between the click, 2 steps, and then food, we teach the horse to keep going after a click. Kika can already do that, but because the motivation for Kika is not the motivation that we want, so therefore you have to just teach her, like, pay attention to the cones and to the click, because otherwise we create frustration. So even though we are getting the same results after the click, we want the horses to move, we have to really pay attention to what is the motivation for a horse to move. Is it frustration, or is it, oh, I know what I'm going to get, because I'm going to get my treat at the cone or just maybe around the corner. And then we, if we do this a few times, and a few times totally depends on the horse. Some horses get it within like 5 or 10 minute sessions. Some horses need like 3 or 4 sessions. But it's all about consistency, and pay attention that you don't create frustration. So as soon as you have clicked, you kind of have to be ready with the food. So sometimes, and then you can also alternate, like click before the cone, feed at the cone, and then the next cone maybe click and feed at the cone. It's about the principle. If you click a little bit sooner while your horse is going towards the cone and then feed at the cone, that is how you can create movement after the click. And then like you slowly stretch that, and then you can even, here at the top left, your horse leaves cone number 1, you click and you go to the cone. Here's your treat. But I have to say, if you are on the long side of the rectangle, this is like the hardest thing, because we have to run in order to reach the cone sooner than our horse. So I basically, I will adjust this this visual, because if you start to click at cone number 2, we can reach cone number 3 before our horse does. And then we also have to pay attention that the horse is moving and that we are standing still while we are clicking, because otherwise we still become the cue because we are moving. So we put the click sooner and sooner until we can click at one cone and then feed at the other. What will happen is that the horse will anticipate, because they know, okay, here's the click. This is reinforced, because we can reinforce with a secondary reinforcer, which is a learned reinforcer, which is the click, and then reinforce again the behavior that we create with the food. So yeah, between the click and the actual food, there's movement. So we mark movement with the click and then reinforce it with the food, because between the click and the food, we created forward movement. And this is how in no time you can teach your horse to trot from cone to cone. And then again, you do this at every cone. Well, like I said, like on the long side, it's hard to reach, because then you get into a race. So it's easier to do it. You have to figure out what works, but the short sides of the rectangle will work best. That's why a rectangle is just an easy shape. And then it also depends on how fast your horse is, how big how far apart the cones are. But that's basically the principle, that you start to click sooner, and then the cone will give you a visual where they can expect the treat. So the predictability of where they can expect the treat is high. So frustration stays low, but they will anticipate, and they will learn after a few times. Oh, the sooner I get to the next cone, the sooner I get my treat. So this is all about the principle. This is not like this is how you do it, but this is like, okay, I have to figure out a way to click and mark the behavior of going towards the cone, and then feed somewhere where it's predictable. So that's why I say like next cone. And then you can like, yeah, you can basically click at one cone, feed at the other. And that's how you can create duration and speed at the same time. If your horse gets frustrated, you have to go back a little bit, like click feed at every cone. If your horse stops moving because you stopped moving, then you realize, okay, I became the cue because I was already moving. So those are all things, but now you have the basis that you know to pay attention of. If you recognize like, okay, my horse won't offer movement because he's waiting until I walk to a certain cone, that you go back to you move without me moving and clicking that.
Is this something, because Bo is already going around all four cones by himself, is this something you are still saying that I need to do too?
How, if you have another solution to create trot, great. I would love to hear about it.
No, I'm just asking you, like, if this, so I guess.
Because what I've seen you do, I watched this morning the video you posted 2 days ago, so maybe you are further in your training. But what I notice is that you mark with good job, good boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you feed where you mark the behavior.
Right. Okay. So you're saying like, if I can get him to keep, like, if I mark in between the cones and I can get him to go to the next cone, that will start making him trot?
Usually. Not like, and it depends on horse to horse, but that is the idea. I like the video that I saw, the setup. We also have to consider to make it easy to trot. So if you are, for instance, working in a square where from going from cone to cone, there's almost no room to trot, or your horse is like does the transition like really gradually. Like some horses go from walk to trot in like quickly. Some horses like Kira, she was more like, okay, I'm walking faster, then trot. So if like from cone to cone, there's just not enough distance to create a trot or to offer a trot, then you will make it very, very difficult for your horse. So we always want to make it very easy to come up with the right solution that we figured out in our heads that they don't know anything about.
I maybe need to make my rectangle bigger to make it easier on him.
Yeah, I do believe so. And then what you could just, and this is like, think of it as this is the principle, and then how would I apply it in my situation for my horse? Yeah, how can I make this work in my situation? So for your situation, maybe you could make the rectangle longer, and maybe temporarily you want to put like a cone in on the long side to help offer clarity where to expect the click and where to expect food. I don't know, but that because at the same time, we also still want to go back to the middle,
Mhm.
right? But if we make it too big, it's hard to go back to the middle, more or less. Yeah, and then we are having like we create that we fall back to walking with our horse, so then the horse will just start looking at, oh, is my trainer moving? I will move, like that kind of idea.
Okay, so like if I click at one cone and he stops because I click, should I just go ahead and tell him to walk on, or do I
No.
just go walk with him and put the treat at the next cone?
I would feed for position and use that technique to help him move, and the speed and the duration of that movement does not matter. So if you have a horse that clicks and stops, you make sure that you are pretty quickly just like maybe one step in front of him and offer the treat. So he will just have to do one step.
Okay.
And if you do that consistently, they will anticipate on where they will find the food. The food is not delivered here anymore, but there. So they will anticipate and start moving.
Okay. And that doesn't teach them to ignore the click because it teaches them to keep going after you click?
Yes and no, because the click will then also become a predictor of the food.
Okay.
And it like the reason why I set it up with the cones and all is that yeah, maybe in this situation, but they will also start to, like, for instance, for Fionn, they will keep moving after the click, and that's totally fine because the click will always be the cue for the next behavior. But up until now, the click was the cue to stand.
Okay.
So yeah, but therefore, because the aim is movement and the aim is duration in movement and the aim is movement for exercise, if you do this in this particular setup, the click will mean keep going in this particular setup.
Okay.
But in other setups, they will react differently because they have other like environmental cues or cues from the trainer. It will not be that if you target your horse and you click that he will start trotting, because the
Because
click
really, like
is
the
trot
oh, sorry,
cue.
Sandra.
Yeah,
Because
go
like
ahead.
the click is really supposed to mean like your food is coming. Like it's like the cue to eat, sort of. In my head, like it's a cue to eat, and then in this setup, they just know to perform the behavior of eating. I just walk a few steps and then I eat. So it's kind of like it's still cueing the behavior of eat your like get your reinforcer. It's just like then they learn like a chain almost of like, oh, I walk and I get my reinforcer.
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
Because like it was such a like I had a hard time to wrap my head around the fact that the click becomes a cue for the next behavior, because you mark with your click or your marker or your word or whatever, you mark that specific behavior, and then you give a primary reinforcer food that they don't have to learn. But the immediately after the click, behavior happens. So for instance, your horse touches a target, you click, then he stops touching it, and then he gets food. So you you also mark behavior with food. So it's a little bit can be confusing, but yeah, the click becomes a cue for some other behavior, and that's always the case. And the horses are very good guessers, because they will get their cues from their environment about what to do next. Like you can teach your horse to touch a target, keep their neck straight, because that's where the food will happen. And then, yeah, that becomes like a chain of behaviors, like going, I see the target, I will touch the target, I'll keep my neck straight, and then I will get food. So this is basically the same, only we mark movement, and then, yeah, we feed when they have done even more movement. But this is how it really works. But I do want to say we have to give the horse clarity to keep the frustration low. So in the beginning, yeah, click and feed at the cone, and then you click a little bit, maybe one step earlier than you would have clicked normally, and then feed at the same place. So yeah, that stays consistent, and then you can even pull that more together, like yeah, clicking way before the cone and then feeding, and then you can eventually click for going around cone number 1 and then feed at cone number 2. And that's where you kind of have like empty clicks. But because you do this consistently, you offer a lot of clarity. Yeah, you will get speed. And I think because you offer a lot of predictability, it's not like you click at one cone and then at a random cone you feed, or you don't feed at all.
Right. We're not really changing where we feed, because we're actually feeding at the same spot every time. We're just clicking a little earlier each time.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And you click when your horse is still doing the behavior, and because he knows something good is happening around the cone, because it is something about the cones, they have already figured that out. If you make that feeling stronger, like it's the cones, then because then like one of the next steps is to raise criterion about like distance between the cones. But because they know, okay, I will be fed at the cone, I have to go around the cone, something is happening at the cone, you decrease the likelihood of skipping the cones, because they know the cone is the visual cue. And that's how you then, if you build this foundation that you all have by now, then raising the criteria for duration and for speed and for distance between the cones is not difficult anymore, because you have taught your horse the ground rules, like it's about the cone, go around the cone, food is happening at the cone, and I have to move without my trainer moving. Any questions? Then yeah, I have a question for Rachel. In the video that I looked at today, Bo is consistently offering movement, even when you are standing still, you have your hands in your pocket. So do you have a cue for going around the cones?
For going around the cones, no. I just started out like Sandra said and clicking at every cone, and actually like this morning he actually did make a mistake, and it seems like once he makes a mistake that sometimes he will do it repeatedly after that. So he made a mistake and cut one off, and I fixed him this morning, and we went back around and he made the same mistake again. So then I went back to click and treating for every single cone. So then like I went back around the whole entire rectangle, and we We stopped at every cone and click and treat. And then I asked him to go back around by himself again, and he did it right.
And sometimes if they do it once, we immediately have to think about how we can prevent the horse from making that mistake again. Like yesterday, somebody was practicing with my horse, and Fionn cut the corner, and I'm super strict about it. I will go immediately in with targeting, use targeting to guide my horse back and around the corner. And even if I have to use like 5 or 10 or 20 clicks, it doesn't matter. We do not skip cones. But sometimes it happens. So it happens with this person, and she didn't know what to do, so she kind of ignored it. So I was there waiting, like, oh, I'm interested to see what happened. And of course, the next time Fionn went around 3 cones, he skipped that other cone because, yeah, that's what he was doing. So then I taught her how to go back and not let that slide, because she was kind of blocking him then. And I'm like, well, if you block your horse and prevent him from going in front of the cone, he does not learn because it's not his own decision where to go. You simply prevent it. So the moment that she stepped inside, like more in the middle, yep, he was skipping that cone again because she wasn't there to block him. So therefore, if you then use targeting or and feeding for position or whatever you have at hand to teach your horse to go around that cone that he's skipping, then first of all, lots of good things are happening around that cone with clicks and treats. And then the next time I explained to her, like, you have to click before he's making a mistake. So while he's still doing the right behavior, going in a straight line towards that cone, just the cone before, click and treat. So you also have a pattern interrupt, like, okay, oh, a treat is coming, nice. And then the moment he walks, if he walks like, if you can guess that he will aim for going around or coming inside, like, okay, if he comes inside, click, because then he will stop, and then feed for position. So you can like guide him to the outside. But usually they will anticipate, and then they will go around the cone that they just skipped. And usually I for the next few rounds, I do give a jackpot at the cone that they skipped. So they are thinking about going around the cone because that's so fantastic.
I will say though that too, I have, I don't know, like I've done so much clicker training in the past, like I feel like to a degree I can cheat a little bit because he's super responsive to even whenever I just flick my finger. So sometimes if I notice he's even edging too close to a cone, I can kind of just point my finger and he'll go on ahead and go around it correctly.
Yeah. But what you're doing is you're giving him a cue, you're giving him information about what to do. And then if you also reinforce at least once in a while his response, the desired response, you will keep that in his repertoire. And that's super cool, because I saw you at 1.58, he was kind of slowing down and you pointed and then he started moving again. So I think if you use that as a cue to start him off walking, you can also use that as for trot and canter. Or you can use a verbal cue, but I do believe that horses are better with body cues than with verbal cues.
Yeah, he does know the walk-on cue. I've used it in one of my videos before, and he does recognize it, but he's a whole lot more responsive to the point. But I was going to ask you, like, since he does already have some of the, the point and the walk-on and some of my verbal cues and stuff, you still don't want me to use those to try to encourage faster movement, right? You want me to use
Because
the
what you can try it out. If he responds immediately with the desired behavior, great. If he doesn't, the cue doesn't really is not a cue because
Right.
it's not under stimulus control. So yes, I would love to try it out and make a video and see what happens, because if you can give him that information, that's really great. However, it could be like for some horses, like a lot of people that I work with have traditionally trained horses or even natural horsemanship trained horses. So in their horse's mind, what we think is a cue, is a question, is information about the next behavior, is really the horse, and it's all about the animal and the learner. So if the horse hears your cue or the trainer's cue, and the trainer think it's a cue, and the horse thinks it's a command, and anticipates because of something aversive would happen if they wouldn't listen, then you invite a connection with something aversive in that exercise. When you're exercising overweight horses, it's already aversive to move in the first place. So we don't want to add, we would like to avoid like having a connection with an aversive thing in the first place. Like if a horse like pins his ears when he hears the word trot, well, I know in the horse's mind, it's like, okay, trot or else. So then the horses will trot. So sometimes I just want to be on the safe side, and that's why I teach the behavior first, and then add a cue in order to make sure that nothing aversive is connected into or attached to that behavior. If that makes sense.
Ja, das. Oh.
yeah.
So if it helps your horse and your horse does not have any aversive association with it, of course you can use it. But the moment that, like, because you already said like there is some like frustration going on and he's doing better now, but like it's up to you to figure that out. You want to take that risk, or you want to take that risk once and see what happens if he doesn't start to trot. But if he trots with like tail swishing or really like a face that you think, no, he's not, like ears forward, yes, trot, then I would not use that cue in this context at this moment, but really work on like, appetitive, desired, good feelings first, and then add a cue.
Okay. Yeah, voice cues have been strictly R+ for us. So I don't think as far as that goes, it should be a problem. But if it doesn't work, we'll go back to doing the other way.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I really want people to think for themselves, but also, that's why I really love to use like teaching principles and see like what have you got in your toolbox, what can you use, because if you have something fabulous, if the voice cues are really associated with appetitives, that's great. But also it could be a potential pitfall for us to expect the horse to trot while the environment is completely different. There's suddenly cones and the horse does not yet have like any association or expectation what to do. We keep him guessing, and then frustration can get in. But I think like at this point, like Bo knows what to do. The visual cues for the rectangle are so strong. Yeah, try it out. And yeah, make sure that you video it so that you can review it, what happened, because in the moment we sometimes cannot actually see what happening. And then you can review it and think like, okay, this worked, or it didn't really work. And then, but it's really easy to get the behavior first and then add the cue. But if you have the cue already, yeah, try it out and let's see what happens. Any other questions? I have a question, Patricia.
No, I don't think so at the moment. Everything's quite clear.
Wonderful. Yeah. So I will, I will end this session then. If there are questions, go to the Facebook group, tag me, DM me if I don't see the tag, because Facebook is so finicky. And I have lots and lots of things going on there. So, well, thank you for being here. And yeah, I'm looking forward to see your videos. So the homework is train for criterion speed. It doesn't have to be trot. If it's like more active walk, that's fine, because it's all about like making small steps. Track your training in your training journal. I do have shared a training journal, I believe. If not, I will do that. And then share your videos in the group. You can do more than one video, that's fine. And please keep the videos like 3 minutes max. I will only watch the first 3 minutes, but it keeps me on track. Like if somebody, like for instance, put a 15-minute video in there, and I review it, and then another 15-minute video, and somebody has only like 2 shorter videos. If all the videos are about the same length, it's easier for me to kind of keep track and like give equal feedback for everybody. Anyway, thank you very much for being here, and happy horse training. See you in the group. Happy donkey training as well.
Thank you. See you.
Okay. Bye.